I'm Thad Brown. He's Carl Jones. We are talking about Bills and Chiefs, the film breakdown. I know the game's a little bit old, but it was the bye week. I wanted a break. Carl wanted a break. So we took a break, everybody. But the other thing, too, we're going to do this conversation is talk a little bit more about how these two teams might match up the next time they play, probably in January, probably in Orchard Park for the AFC Championship. But first, to talk about this game, I want to point out there's one play. It's early in the second quarter, and this kind of sums up the game for me. The Chiefs sent a five-man zone blitz. So they drop an end who was supposed to be a pass rusher, and they rush, I believe it was a linebacker in a corner. So a five-man blitz, but with a lineman dropping. The Bills pick it up great. Ryan Bates has an unbelievable one-on-one rep against Chris Jones, and they hit Dawson Knox crossing underneath. This is actually late in the second quarter now. I remember exactly when it was. It was early on the touchdown drive that went 99 yards. The Bills beat the blitz by throwing to Knox, but the guy who had dropped, the linebacker who had dropped, is right there to make the tackle. Basically what happened on this play is that everybody did exactly what they were supposed to do. The Chiefs sent a blitz, the Bills properly picked it up, and then the Chiefs properly picked up the Bills' pickup of the blitz. It was just fantastic football and really sums up how this game went. It was punch, counter punch. It was you do a smart thing, I do a smart thing, I beat your smart thing, I adjust to your smart thing with my smart thing. It was so much fun, Carl, to watch initially on the field and then again to go through on the All-22.
I didn't recognize that play live, and then when you showed it yesterday, I was like, whoa. Like, we talk about all the time about, you know, you got to execute what you're going to do, and as long as you do what you're going to do, I don't care about what the other team does. Well, in that scenario, the other team is also doing their 111 as well. But I was also enamored by kind of the cat and mouse play between Dorsey and Spagnuolo, specifically on those two touchdown throws from Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs. Mm-hmm. We're going to get into a little bit in a bit about how Spags loves blitzing. He loves his exotic, creative looks as a defensive coordinator, and it's kind of fun to watch the Chiefs do that. But it hurt him in those two long touchdown passes to Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs. And when you go back and look at it, pre-snap look, the middle field safety, the safety who's going to cap off the defense, is leaning, shading towards the trips receiver side. Mm-hmm. That's a dead giveaway for just about any quarterback once you start playing like 7th grade. Hey, let's go away from the safety and give my guy a one-on-one opportunity. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately for the Chiefs, that one-on-one opportunity was against Gabe Davis, Stephon Diggs, against undrafted corner, and also a 7th-round corner. So those two plays made the game because the Bills had trouble, you know, scoring in the red zone. They got stopped inside the 5-yard line in one situation. But those two plays right there, and specifically the cat and mouse game between Ken Dorsey and Spagnuolo, was fun to watch all game long. And if there is a round 2, I would love to see how those coaches counter that.
Yeah, the corner on those two plays, and really what, like you said, what the Chiefs did there was they sent big blitzes, 6- and 7-man blitzes, and left Josh Williams, who was a 4th-round rookie corner who really hadn't played all year, only in the game because Rashad Fenton and Trent McDuffie, their 1st-round corner, were hurt for this game. He was isolated first on Davis, then on Diggs, and the Bills made him pay. And that's good football. You go find the weak link and you kill it until the other team either takes it out or covers it up somehow. And you know, getting into that sequence, and I think those two plays were big for another reason too. Like you said, the Chiefs love the blitz, and teams have been attacking Josh Allen and the Bills with a blitz this year. And look, the Bills beat it a lot, but they don't beat it all the time. And there are a lot of instances where, especially the Dolphins and the Ravens, were able to get the Bills off the field with properly timed blitzes. What happened in that game is between the second and third quarter, the Chiefs just blitzed the Bills over and over and over. The first 8 blitz attempts resulted in incompletions. The Bills couldn't answer it. But the Bills had the long touchdown to Stephon Diggs, or to Gabe Davis, then the one to Diggs. And I think it intimidated the Chiefs out of blitzing, not for the rest of the game, but on the game-winning touchdown drive at the very end. Once the Bills got past midfield, the Chiefs' last 5 snaps of that drive did not send more than 4 once. To me, the way I read it was the Chiefs realized that if they blitz, they are risking big time a ball going over their head for a touchdown. And I think it also made a difference to score. 20-17, you're protecting for that field goal. The Chiefs are like, we're going to make sure we give up 3 and not 7. The problem is against Josh Allen. You let him sit back there all day. He's going to take 7 anyway. You know, there's really no answer for it. So I think, though, that those 2 deep touchdowns open things up for the Bills to be able to get that go-ahead drive late.
100%. And we talk about Josh Allen's cover 2 hole shots. Mm-hmm. He's done it all year. He had about 2 or 3 in that game when the Chiefs just sat back and, you know, dropped 7 defenders in coverage. And I guarantee you Spag was kind of like in a conflict, like, man, he's having all day to throw these wide open explosive plays, even when we don't blitz. So do we blitz anyways? Because he's going to get there either way it goes. So that cat and mouse game, I believe the one was to Dawson Knox up the sideline, and another one was to Stephon Diggs on that same exact sideline. It was, like I said, it was amazing to see, and Ken Dorsey, I think, deserves some of his flowers for the performance he put on.
Yeah, he had a good day too, for sure. I mean, it's an offensive coordinator. I think he did a good job moving pieces around and finding space. Another thing you liked that we talked about before we came on the air here was the corner play for the Bills, right?
Man, I really, really loved it, and I was really keen and locked in on it because the previous week the Chiefs had played the Raiders, and the Raiders don't really have the corners to really match up with the Chiefs.
Man on man.
Man to man, no, they don't. And Kelsey either, but they were physical at the line of scrimmage. They were beating Kelsey up. I remember a couple snaps, they had a defensive end over Kelsey who would literally just beat him up at the line of scrimmage and then go rush the quarterback. And then the safety's right over top of Kelsey, and he's grabbing him too. And it's just like time after time, when someone's doing that to you, snap after snap, I don't care if it's Travis Kelsey, I don't care who it is, you're going to get tired and exhausted. And it worked in slowing down Kelsey. Now, granted, the other guys got off, but the Bills had the personnel to,
to cover the other guys
cover the other guys up. In particular, I thought Kaiir Elam had his best day in man. He's been playing a lot more zone coverage this year just because of the system that the Bills play. Coming into this game, the Bills had played, I believe, about 28% of their snaps.
Yeah, that's about right. About
in
that.
zone.
Or in man.
In
man.
They were above 50 against the Chiefs, which is two things. It's A, Leslie Frazier is getting a little bit more confidence in those younger DBs. And then also, I don't think anybody across from me as a Bills DB going against those Chiefs receivers, I don't fear any of them. Kaiir Elam did not fear Marquez Valdez-Scantling. He did not fear Juju Smith-Schuster, Sky Moore. It didn't matter who was in front of him, and that goes for Dane Jackson as well. And Leslie Frazier's idea is that I'm going to force Patrick Mahomes to be perfect every single snap. I'm going to force him to make the best throw that he can possibly make, and snap after snap, he's going to have to do that. Now, granted, they still threw for 300-something odd yards.
Because Pat Mahomes is not perfect, but he's darn close.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
But I'm of the belief I don't care about yardage, I care about points, and they only they limited the Chiefs to 20 points. And going back to the Kaiir Elam point, his reps, obviously the interception was cool to see, but even his reps where he wasn't getting targeted, moving his feet, getting those long arms involved and engaged with some of those shorter developing routes was very encouraging to see.
A lot less grabbing, a lot more, like you said, earlier in the year you talked about this, counting on the footwork. Elam did a much better job of that. I think the defensive point I want to talk about is Von Miller. I mean, look, everybody saw the 2 sacks. It was easy to see. I charted him with 8 quarterback pressures in a game, which is bananas, folks. Look, most of the time you get to 4 in a game, you've had a nice game. He had 8, including, 1 each on the last 2 plays. If you've been on social media at all, you've seen how the Bills kind of set up the final game interception that Taron Johnson had to seal the win with Von Miller rushing inside to force Patrick Mahomes to scramble outside right into where Matt Milano was going to get in the way of the passing lane, forcing him to try and throw around to where the Bills were basically baiting him into making an interception. It was, again, another great piece of defense. I think, to step back a little bit, the 2 playoff losses the Bills had in Kansas City, I thought they got grossly outcoached. In this game, the Bills coaches won the battle. They were the better group on both sides of the ball, and that made a difference. But going back to Miller, I mean, you want to get a certain amount of production when you're going to pay a guy $51 million guaranteed. The 2 sacks were plenty by itself, but the amount of time he was impacting the quarterback, especially late, especially when it mattered, was super impressive. And the Bills had a lot of pressures across the board. Jordan Phillips was very good, had a big pressure on the goal line or in a goal line situation, in a red zone situation. So there were more players other than Von Miller, but Miller was the one that topped it off for me.
Closer. I mean, that's the best way you can describe it. It was the key 3rd downs, obviously at the end of the game, where the Bills needed to play. And in previous seasons, you didn't have that one-on-one guy who can just bring it home, like without doing some exotic blitz. You just didn't have that guy who can say, hey, go get him and get these guys off the field. And, man, Von Miller did that and then some. And
not only were they not blitzing, at the end of the game, they were running 3-man rushes for most of the part. And they weren't even having to rush 4. We've talked about how impressive the Bills have been just rushing 4 all the time. They were rushing 3 with Matt Milano spying, but rushing 3 to get to the quarterback late in this game. Let's real quick, because I want to talk about how these 2 teams are going to match up again when and if they meet in January. But anybody on offense that stood out for you for the Bills, a player or a group that kind of shone a little bit more in this game?
Come on. the offensive line, giving Devin Singletary the rushing yardage that he had in the first half, that was so encouraging to see. And I know that the Chiefs' defense, they kind of like
Lighten the box. There's a lot of that, yeah.
But you know what? The 49ers had that same game plan this past weekend, and the 49ers gave up 40-some-odd points. So I'm, you know, you can only go out there and do what you're told to do and what's expected of you. And we've been wanting to see just some semblance of a running game. I don't need to see you guys out here running for 300-some-odd yards, but when the box is light, can you take advantage of it? And in the first half, at least, that was encouraging to see.
Now, when these teams meet again, and you and I had a good discussion about this last night, I want to get into this a little bit more here. One thing that we've talked about in this space, in terms of when teams go against the Bills offense, there's two things that you see teams doing. Number one, same thing going back to last year, dropping 2 and 3 safeties deep, trying to keep things in front of you. The Chiefs succeeded on it when they weren't blitzing, but like you said, Steve Spagnuolo can't help himself, so he's going to blitz at some point. But the other thing that teams have been doing a lot of is just sending all kinds of blitzes, or teams at least who do that have been succeeding with it. Not because the blitzes get home all the time, or even most of the time, but I think defensive coordinators understand when you go against an offense like Josh Allen, the bar for success gets really low. Like, can we force a punt a half? You know, can we not let them score 30? Those are goals. And when you send blitzes constantly and keep varying them up, yeah, the Bills are going to pick up and beat a lot of them, but the ones they don't, all of a sudden you get that one punt or you get that one field goal. And, you know, this Bills team, 3 of the last 4 games, hasn't exceeded 24 points. So now, regardless of what everybody's doing, any trends or anything, we know Steve Spagnuolo is going to blitz again, no matter what when we get to January.
But the blitzing wasn't the issue. It's just that, you know, sometimes it's gonna falter. Like, it is what it is. Just like if you sit and cover 2 all game, they're gonna take advantage of that too. These guys get paid too. But like you said, though, can we get off the field in timely situations? The Bills had 9 drives excluding the kneel down. They only scored on 5. And I know, whoa, that's above 50%.
Yeah.
I don't care. If we limit the Bills to, if you're a defensive coordinator, you limit the Bills to 24 points.
And 5 scoring drives.
And 5 scoring drives. One was a turnover on downs. One was the fumble.
Well, it would only been 4 scoring drives, right? Because it was 3 touchdowns and a field goal.
Exactly. So it's just like, you got, exactly.
The 4 scoring drives.
The games were so long ago. Sorry, guys. But exactly, with the fumble and the turnover on downs and just the punts, all I need is just a couple situations where Josh Allen thinks on 3rd down a couple times a half. And then maybe a turnover from all the time that we're forcing the dink and dump down the field. As a defensive coordinator, that's a win. Because like you said, the bar is so extremely low to going against the Bills team. And like you said, varying up the looks, the Chiefs are kind of in a dilemma because they can't sit and cover 2 all game because they don't have the front 4 to do anything.
Right.
That was so
they have to blitz.
They
just
have to
as
blitz.
a general defensive.
Like, outside of Chris Jones, I don't think no one on that Chiefs defensive line.
Frank Clark had a nice game. He can play. They still have Melvin Ingram, who, I mean, from time to time was.
Karlaftis, maybe he'll be better.
Maybe, yeah. He hasn't been there yet, though.
But in that specific game, outside of Chris Jones, no one had really made a crazy impact. So the Chiefs are going to have to blitz, and maybe when they get their 2 DBs, they'll be more inclined to, you know, die by the sword, live by the sword, die by the sword. Maybe they'll be more inclined to do it more than just those 15-odd snaps they did. But man, that's a hell of a game plan that I can't wait to see.
I'm interested to see if the Bills continue to attack down the field on that blitz. We got to wait till January potentially to find out. But remember, like we said, they went after a rookie corner who hadn't played. Now, theoretically, probably the Chiefs won't have 2 corners hurt for the next time these 2 teams meet. Are the Bills still willing to put Gabe Davis one-on-one down the field? And I'm not saying it's a bad play. In fact, I'm saying the opposite. I think they should, make that play, or at least attempt to make that play, at the very least to keep teams honest. But you do need to succeed on it. If the deep ball that Gabe Davis did in the first half doesn't get hit, then the Chiefs keep coming because they're thinking the worst that's going to happen to us is you're going to complete a ball for 8 yards, which, yeah, you might get a first down, but at some point you're not going to get a first down and then we win. So I want to see as the season goes along, when the Bills meet the Packers this week and the Jets next week, 2 teams that I don't think will blitz much. Those are 2 teams that have pretty good rushes on their own in the front 4. But this, again, the blueprint is kind of out on how you can have a little success against the Bills. How do they respond to it going forward? The other part of this, and a great conversation we talked about, is how the Bills use Kaiir Elam potentially in the next matchup with the Chiefs.
So this will be in January, late January. At this point, we expect Trey White to be back at that time, 3 months in after his return to the field. Presumably, you'll have Dane Jackson, Kaiir Elam, Trey White, and then also Christian Benford as your 4 corners.
Right.
But what makes Kaiir Elam so intriguing in that specific matchup, we saw Neal go up against Kelsey on obvious passing
Siran
down.
Neal, yep.
Siran Neal. And not gonna lie to you, I'm not like some DB guru. I loved it. I played the position for a long time. But his technique against Kelsey wasn't anything sophisticated. It would just go, hey, let me just grab him and like just see what happens.
Let's wrestle
Let's
him.
wrestle with the line of scrimmage, right? Let's lose that 5-yard buffer that they give you in the NFL and just do that. And it's not knocking Neal, but that's just what's the game plan that they had.
It's not a terrible idea.
It's not.
Yeah.
And I wonder the second time around where if it's Trey White on the outside and also Dane Jackson or Benford on the outside.
Well, let's say Dane Jackson. I think at this point the probable assumption would be the January corner tandem is Trey and Dane for 90+ snaps, if not 100. So let's go with that assumption.
And if that's the case, and then Taron Johnson is your obvious nickel, we're not going to take him off the field. But on obvious passing downs, 3rd and long, 2-minute situations, why not throw a bigger body like Kaiir Elam on Travis Kelce?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've seen the Derwin James of the world. We've seen these other, quasi-backer safety types who are able to give Kelce, I'm not going to say problems, but some type of fits here and there. Right. Kaiir is clearly not as big as Derwin James or those other types, but he's long and he's athletic. Why not throw a couple snaps on him against Travis Kelce, who obviously he's one of one, he's a Hall of Fame type of player. But that one matchup where Kelce got the OPI against Kaiir Elam, I'm not pushing off of a guy if I don't think I'm not going to get open against him. I wonder if that's something that the Bills look at going forward.
The one we talked about this, the caveat with it is that Elam is not a great tackler. So if you do complete some to Kelce, which is going to happen, I don't care who's on him, that's a concern. But I love the idea from the point of view, too, that if you're going to throw a bunch of different looks at Kelce, A, it's just beneficial to keep that guy working all day. But B, we saw Siran Neal have to go to the fight and the constant wrestle. At some point, that guy gets exhausted. Now you have another option that you can just pull off the bench fresh, mostly fresh, put him against, Travis Kelce, and now it's almost like what the Bills do with the defensive line where they rotate guys around to keep them all fresh. You can rotate your Kelce defenders, and you've got this guy Elam who can, even though he's not, like you said, built like a safety, probably can play Kelce like that enough times to make it interesting.
I don't need much technique to just go out there and grab a guy in between 5 yards. I don't care who you are.
And we saw in training camp that Kaiir Elam knows how to grab guys.
That's one thing he can do.
He's got to work about. All right. Hope you enjoy listening to this. We'll do it next week for the Bills and the Packers. Look forward to that one. For Carl Jones, I'm Thad Brown. Check out something else here at RochesterFirst.com.